The old heroes lived in the shadows of a world that had long since forgotten them. They once stood at the forefront of humanity's defense, unwavering, invincible, legends in their own time. But now, they were just relics of a past that seemed distant, almost mythical. And the world they had fought for? It had moved on without them. Years had passed since the last battle. The great wars were over. No one talked about the grand victories or the sacrifices made. People had become complacent, lulled into a false sense of security. Cities gleamed with technological wonders, and the government's military force was a polished, well-funded machine of young, capable soldiers. But none of them remembered the old ways. None of them knew the stories of the men and women who had once saved this world, not once, but countless times. Among the forgotten, there was Rod Blackstone, the former leader of the Defenders, the elite group that had once guarded the planet against extraterrestrial invasions. Now, he lived in a small, quiet house in the mountains, far removed from the hustle and bustle of society. His armor had rusted, and his once powerful frame had become hunched with age. His old war staff, once an instrument of immense power, was now an antique gathering dust in the corner of his living room. Rod had been retired for nearly 15 years, living out his days fishing and reading, never once looking back. The old scars on his body ached now and then, but he had long since learned to ignore the pain. He had buried his past deep within himself, convinced it was over. But on this quiet evening, as he sat sipping a glass of whiskey, staring out over the mountain range, a loud crack shattered the calm. A sudden, violent tremor shook the earth beneath him. His glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. The world outside the window seemed to explode in blinding light. He rushed outside, heart pounding, to witness what could only be described as a cataclysm, a massive streak of fiery light falling from the sky, tearing through the heavens like an omen. Rod's mind raced, his instincts kicking in despite the years of retirement. The horizon darkened as the fiery streak grew larger, crashing into the valley below with an earth-shaking force. He had been expecting something, though he could never have known what. His old comrades had felt it too. There was no doubt in his mind. This wasn't just a meteorite. This was something far worse. Rod clenched his fists, feeling the old power surge through his veins. His bones ached, but his heart burned with something he hadn't felt in years, purpose. And just like that, he knew. They were back. It's time, he whispered to himself. He reached for his phone, dialing a number he hadn't used in over a decade. The line rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Blackstone, is it time? Rod nodded grimly. It's happening. The invasion's begun. We need to assemble the team. The voice on the other end was steady, but Rod could hear the faint tremor of fear. It wasn't the fear of a man who didn't know how to fight, but the fear of a warrior who knew exactly what they were about to face. Do you think we can still do it? The voice asked. Rod didn't hesitate. We have to. And with that, the old heroes were called back into action. But this time, the world had changed. And so had they. Rod knew they couldn't rely on their old skills alone. The alien threat that now loomed was unlike anything they had ever encountered. They would need more than just their past glory to survive. They would need to adapt. Rod didn't waste time. The first call was the easiest. Sarah Sarge O'Connor, the toughest soldier to ever wear the battle armor of the Defenders. She was stationed on the fringes of the capital, teaching new recruits how to fight. Though the new soldiers never knew of her legendary status, there were whispers in the barracks. Whispers of a woman who had fought the fiercest battles the world had ever known. Sarah was always prepared, always vigilant, her mind still sharp, despite the years. Her combat techniques were a relic, honed during a time when the enemies they fought were more brutal, more relentless. She hadn't touched a weapon in nearly a decade, but when Rod's call came through, she didn't hesitate. Understood. I'll gather the others, she said before hanging up, her voice unwavering. Rod's next call went to Felix Fury Hargrave, the tech genius and former hacker who had helped develop many of the advanced defense systems still used today. Felix had been responsible for turning the tide in countless covert operations, and his knowledge of alien technology had saved humanity more times than anyone could count. But now, he was a recluse, holed up in a high-tech bunker beneath the city, tinkering with projects that were, at best, borderline legal. When Rod reached out to him, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Rod, I thought we were done with this," Felix muttered, his voice tinged with skepticism. "The invasion's begun. We need you," Rod replied, his tone firm. Felix sighed, and then the unmistakable sound of typing echoed through the phone. "Fine, but I'll need new gear. And I mean new, not your outdated tech," Rod smirked. "You'll get what you need. Just come. We don't have time to argue." And with that, Felix's voice was gone, replaced by the steady clicking of keys as he prepared for the unknown. The final call was to Dr. Emily Ems Caldwell, a biologist and former strategist. Ems had been the one who understood the enemy better than anyone else. It was her research that had helped the defenders adapt to the unique biology of the alien invaders in the past. She had been one of the first to discover how to defeat the Alien Queen, a battle that had cost her an arm but earned her a place in history. However, after the war ended, Ems had retreated from the public eye. She now lived alone, tending to a small farm far from the chaos of the world. She had moved on, or at least, that's what she had told herself. The moment she heard Rod's voice, though, something deep inside stirred, an old instinct. "You're serious," she said flatly, the disbelief palpable. "I wouldn't be calling if I wasn't," Rod replied, his voice urgent. There was a long silence on the other end of the line before Ems sighed. "All right, Blackstone, you have my attention. But I won't just be some soldier in the field. I've got research to do. And if we're fighting these things again, I need answers." Rod was about to respond, but she interrupted. "Give me 2 hours. I'll be ready." And so, the old heroes, scattered across the world in their separate corners, began to return. The team was far from what it had once been, a formidable force of unity and precision. They were fragmented, older, and perhaps even slower than they used to be. They had spent years in retirement, pretending their battle was over. But now, they were being pulled back into the fight, with the weight of the world pressing on their shoulders. As Rod stood in his small cabin, staring out into the valley, the realization hit him like a freight train. These were not the same warriors they had once been. The world had moved forward, and technology had advanced beyond their old weapons and strategies. The new generation of soldiers would have their own way of fighting, smarter, faster, more high-tech. But the heroes from the past had something the younger generation didn't. They had experience. They had the scars of battle. And perhaps that would be enough. When the team finally gathered, it was under the cover of night, away from the prying eyes of the public. The group reconvened in an old, forgotten military bunker beneath the city, a place that had long been abandoned and swallowed by time. Rod stood at the front of the group, taking in the familiar faces. Sarah, her face hardened but still carrying the scars of her youth. Felix, as eccentric as ever, fiddling with his latest invention. Ems, who was deep in thought, already preparing her mind for the questions that lay ahead. "Welcome back, team," Rod said, his voice hoarse but strong. They had been the best humanity had to offer. Now, the world needed them again. And this time, the stakes were higher. Far higher than they could have ever imagined. Rod took a deep breath, looking each of them in the eye. "We have to be smarter than we were last time. This time, we fight together. No matter what happens." Felix shot him a grin, a twinkle of mischief in his eyes. "Well, let's just hope the new toys I've been building are good enough to keep us alive." Sarah cracked a smile, but it was brief. There was no time for jokes now. The enemy was coming, and they were ready to face whatever lay ahead. The bunker had a musty, metallic smell, and the hum of old machinery echoed in the corners of the room. The familiar sight of maps, monitors, and dusty old tech only reminded them how long it had been since they were in action. It was almost as if the years had drained the life out of the place. But now, the team had returned, and something about the atmosphere felt charged, ready to crack open. Rod stood at the center, taking in the surroundings, while Sarah, Felix, and Ems gathered around the table where the plans had already begun to form. Felix pulled up a holographic display on the table, a brilliant swirl of alien designs and schematics. "I've been scanning the wreckage from the crash site," he said, his fingers dancing across the glowing interface. "We're dealing with something unfamiliar. These things are not like the invaders we fought in the past. The tech is far more advanced, and they managed to make their way through our defenses without us even knowing." Rod leaned in, squinting at the holographic display. The design was like nothing he'd ever seen. "We've been blindsided," Felix nodded grimly. "Exactly. These invaders didn't just come for the planet's resources or to make a quick conquest. They've been planning something deeper." The display flickered, and the image of a colossal alien ship appeared, its shape unlike any terrestrial vessel. It was sleek, organic in design, like something grown rather than constructed. Ems stepped closer, her expression unreadable. "This is different," she said softly. "I've studied enough alien species to know that they don't typically act like this. We're not just facing soldiers, we're facing something else entirely." Rod turned to her, sensing the underlying concern in her voice. "What are you saying?" Ems hesitated. "These invaders are hunters, and I don't think they're here to conquer. I think they're here to eliminate humanity as a threat. Something in their biology, it's adapted for hunting sentient species." Sarah crossed her arms, her brow furrowing. "So they've been waiting? For what?" Rod stepped forward, his fists clenched. "For us to become weak. They've been watching and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. When we let our guard down, when the next generation of warriors is too busy with their own wars. And now, they're moving. Their first attack was just the beginning." Felix zoomed in on a specific part of the ship's structure. "This," he said, pointing to the core of the ship, "is what I've been studying the most. It looks like some kind of weapon. Not just a ship, but a vessel built for war. And it's not alone. I've detected several others just like it, scattered across the globe, and they're all coming in fast." Rod's mind raced. How long until they're fully in position? Felix grimaced. "A matter of days, maybe even hours. We're running out of time." There was a long silence as the weight of the situation settled in. The world they had fought to protect was teetering on the edge of annihilation. The defenders weren't just returning to fight an invasion. They were returning to fight a war unlike any they had ever faced. Rod turned to Sarah and Ems. "We need a new strategy. We can't rely on our old methods. We're going to have to adapt, fight smarter, not harder." Sarah nodded, her jaw set. "I can work with the new generation of soldiers. The ones who are trained with the latest tactics and tech. If we're going to get through this, we need to build alliances, fast." Ems crossed her arms thoughtfully. "And we need to understand how they think. These aliens won't be defeated by brute force alone. We need to get inside their minds, understand their biology, their weaknesses. If we don't, we'll just be fighting blind." Rod took a deep breath. This wasn't like the old days, where everything had been about sheer power and muscle. They were facing an enemy that was far more advanced, far more cunning. They would need more than just weapons and armor. They would need knowledge, strategy, and above all, unity. "We'll start by assembling a team of the best soldiers, young and old. Felix, can you get us access to the latest weaponry? Anything that can counter their tech?" Felix's eyes gleamed with excitement. "I already have some ideas. But we'll need to move fast. I'm talking a full weapons overhaul. New technology that can give us an edge against their ships, their armor, even their biological warfare." Rod nodded. "Good. Sarah, you'll help get the new recruits ready. We'll need them to be at the top of their game, and fast. They'll need to trust the old ways, even if they don't understand them." Sarah grinned. They'll learn quick. They don't have a choice. And Ems, Rod said, turning to her. We need you to work with Felix on the alien biology. Find out what makes them tick. Their weaknesses, anything. We can't afford to fight without knowing everything about them. Ems gave a curt nod. Leave it to me. I'll figure them out. With the plan set, the team moved into action. Felix immediately retreated to his lab, pulling up blueprints for new weapons and hacking into satellite systems to gather more intel on the alien ships. Ems went to work, studying the data Felix had retrieved from the wreckage and analyzing alien DNA samples. Sarah gathered a group of young, talented soldiers from the military base, pushing them through rigorous training exercises that fused modern techniques with the time-honed methods the defenders had used years ago. The world outside continued to go about its business, blissfully unaware that the clock was ticking down to an inevitable battle. But inside the bunker, the old warriors and their new allies were preparing for the fight of their lives. And Rod Blackstone? He was getting ready for the war he thought had ended long ago. This time, however, it wasn't just about saving humanity. This time, they were fighting for survival. As the days sped by, the bunker became a hive of frantic activity. Felix, locked away in his tech-laden lab, was deep in the bowels of cyber warfare, scrambling to create new weapons that could pierce the aliens' unbreakable armor. Ems worked tirelessly with him, poring over the alien data they had, running experiments and formulating theories. Meanwhile, Sarah led the new generation of soldiers through grueling exercises, teaching them not only modern warfare tactics but how to harness the old skills, the ones that had once made the defenders the most feared warriors on Earth. Rod, in the meantime, had taken it upon himself to begin contacting old allies, military commanders, former intelligence operatives, and leaders of underground resistance cells. The invasion wasn't just an isolated attack, it was a global threat, and he knew that they would need all the help they could get. The team worked day and night, each member relentlessly pursuing their tasks, driven by the knowledge that the enemy was closing in fast. But as much as they were preparing, they all knew one thing. The plan they were forming was as untested as it was daring. And the chances of success were far from certain. It was late one evening when Rod gathered the team in the war room. The room was dimly lit, the glow of monitors casting long shadows across their faces. A large holographic map of the world stretched across the table, dotted with flashing red dots, the locations of the alien ships that were quickly making their way to Earth's atmosphere. Felix stood at the front of the room, his face gaunt and eyes bloodshot from the lack of sleep. He rubbed his temples before addressing the group. They pinpointed the locations of the alien ships, Felix said, voice hoarse. They're coming in hot, fast enough that we won't have time to stop them all. But I've identified a weakness in their fleet. It's in the way their ships are structured. He tapped a few keys on his portable interface, and the hologram zoomed in on a cluster of alien vessels. This ship here, Felix pointed to the largest one, hovering in the atmosphere above a sprawling metropolis, is their flagship. We take that down, we'll throw the entire invasion into disarray. It's like cutting off the head of the snake. Rod leaned forward, scrutinizing the ship on the screen. What's the plan to bring it down? Felix's eyes gleamed, though his fatigue was clear. We have two options. The first is to launch a direct assault with everything we have, heavy artillery, airstrikes, the whole works. The second is, well, a bit more unorthodox. Rod raised an eyebrow. Unorthodox? Ems, who had been quietly examining the alien data on the side, glanced up. He means we go inside the ship, literally. We find a way to infiltrate and disable it from within. Their tech is powerful, yes, but it's not infallible. If we can get someone inside, we can hack into their main systems and cripple their control center. Felix nodded in agreement. The thing is, though, we need someone who can adapt quickly to their tech. And that's where you all come in. I can reprogram some of our drones to serve as a distraction, and Sarah can lead an assault team to storm their defenses. But the real risk is the infiltration mission. We don't know enough about the ship's layout to know where we'll be going, And if we get caught, it's game over. Rod thought for a moment, looking between the team members. He could see the hesitation in their eyes. The danger of the mission was clear. This wasn't going to be a conventional fight. They weren't just going up against enemies. They were about to dive headfirst into a situation with no guarantees. But then, Sarah broke the silence. "I volunteer," she said, her voice steady and resolute. "If anyone can get inside and plant the explosives, it's going to be me. I'll take a team and break through their defenses." Rod looked at her, knowing full well what kind of sacrifice that meant. "It's too risky, Sarah. We can't afford to lose you." She shook her head, her eyes fierce. "We don't have time to argue about this, Rod. You said it yourself. We need to be smarter, adapt. I can get in and out faster than anyone. And if we're going to have a chance at taking down their flagship, I'm the one who can do it." Rod nodded, understanding her determination. She was right. This mission was as much about improvisation and quick thinking as it was about brute strength, and Sarah had always been the best at that. "All right," he said, voice low. "You lead the assault team. But you're not doing this alone. Felix, we need a plan for how we're going to take down the flagship's defenses while Sarah's team works on the inside." Felix was already on it, tapping away at his interface. "I've got some ideas for setting up a temporary EMP field that will disrupt their communications and power systems. It won't last long, but long enough for Sarah to make her move. As for getting inside, I can work on hacking their security systems. But once you're in, it'll be up to you to get to the core." Ems nodded, already thinking ahead. "I'll work with Felix to figure out how to use the alien tech against them. Their biological components may hold the key to their vulnerabilities. If we can get a sample from the core, we might be able to develop something that will work as a biological countermeasure." Rod's mind raced, his heart thudding in his chest. He had to admit, this was their best shot. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was all they had. "Okay," he said finally, looking around at the team, "we move out in 24 hours. We have one shot at this, and we take it." The room fell into a heavy silence. The weight of what lay ahead settled on their shoulders, but there was something else, something unspoken that passed between them. This wasn't just a mission. This was their redemption. Their final stand. Rod took one last look at the map, the flashing red dots signaling the alien ship's arrival. It was now or never. "We fight as one," he said, his voice firm, unwavering. "We finish what we started." The next 24 hours passed in a blur of final preparations. The team was scattered across different sectors of the bunker, each with their task at hand, their minds focused on what was to come. There was no time for hesitation. The invasion had already begun, and the fate of the world hung in the balance. Every detail mattered now. Felix and Ems worked around the clock, putting the final touches on the specialized tech they had developed. Felix had finished modifying a series of high-powered drones capable of infiltrating the alien ship's outer defenses. Ems, using her deep knowledge of alien biology, had developed a synthetic agent that could potentially compromise the invaders' unique biosystem, something that could be used to disrupt their communication and control systems, giving them the edge they needed. Sarah had assembled her team of elite soldiers, hand-picked from the best recruits available. They were green in comparison to the veterans, but their training had been rigorous, and their resolve was unshakable. They stood ready to follow her lead into the heart of the alien war machine, with their weapons and tactics updated to counter the new, unknown technology they would face. Rod had, as always, taken a more strategic approach. He was already coordinating with global military forces, preparing them for the moment the defenders took action. The world might not know the full scope of the war that was about to unfold, but Rod was determined that they would never see the end of it if he could help it. At the command center, Rod stood before a large screen, his eyes scanning the current status reports. Each of the red dots on the map marked an alien ship, each closing in, ready to drop into Earth's atmosphere. The flagship was still hovering over the capital, just waiting to deploy its forces. It was the heart of the invasion, and if they could bring it down, they could disrupt everything else. "Everything's set," Sarah said, entering the command center. Her voice was calm, but there was an intensity in her eyes that couldn't be ignored. "We're ready for deployment." Rod turned to face her. "You've been briefed on the mission?" Sarah nodded. "I know what I need to do. We'll hit them hard and fast. Once I'm inside, it's up to me to disable their core systems. We'll take it from there." Rod gave a curt nod, impressed with her focus. "You're the best person for this job. Just make sure to keep the team safe. We can't afford to lose anyone." Sarah's jaw clenched, but she said nothing. It was clear that she wasn't worried about herself. She was worried about getting the job done. "We're in this together," she said, her voice low. "Let's make sure we win this war." Rod didn't respond. He didn't have to. They all knew what was at stake. The assault began under the cover of darkness. Sarah's team, clad in new, upgraded battle gear, moved swiftly through the night. They were being deployed by transport pods, each unit heading for a specific target within the alien ship's fleet. The sky above was a dark canvas, pierced only by the occasional flicker of fire from the alien ship's outer defenses. The air was thick with anticipation. Felix's drones launched first, flying ahead of the teams, creating chaos and confusion in the alien systems. The EMP pulses they sent out disrupted the enemy's comms and radar, rendering their exterior defenses momentarily useless. It was a narrow window, but it was all they had. "We've got 30 minutes before their systems adapt," Felix's voice crackled through their comms. "Move fast, and be ready for anything." Sarah didn't waste any time. She led her team through the alien landscape with military precision, navigating through the wreckage of the first assault while keeping an eye on the flashing coordinates that marked their mission's progression. Rod, back at the command center, was watching it all unfold. His mind was split between tracking Sarah's team's progress and directing global forces in the airstrikes against the other alien ships. The operation had to be coordinated perfectly, or they'd lose the upper hand. "We've got visual on Sarah's team," one of the officers at the command center reported. "They're near the flagship's core. No significant alien presence detected in their immediate vicinity." Rod's heart pounded. They were on track, but that didn't mean they were safe. "Alert all units," he ordered. "If they're going to strike back, it's going to be soon." Inside the flagship, Sarah and her team had successfully infiltrated the outer layers of the ship's defenses. The alien technology was unlike anything they'd encountered before, organic, pulsating, almost alive, but it was still vulnerable. They moved cautiously through the interior, weapons raised, eyes scanning every corner. "Keep close," Sarah muttered to the team. "If we make too much noise, they'll know we're here." The deeper they went, the more unnatural the ship felt. The walls seemed to pulse with a dark energy, and strange, alien sounds reverberated through the corridors. The team's movements were swift and calculated, but even the quietest footstep felt deafening in the eerie silence of the ship. 500 meters to the core, Sarah's second-in-command, Lieutenant Jace, reported, his voice steady. "We're almost there." But as they turned a corner, a sudden burst of light shot out from the walls, revealing the full extent of the enemy's security system, an array of alien sentries, their bodies seemingly composed of both organic material and technology, their weapons trained directly on Sarah's team. "Ambush!" Sarah shouted, diving behind cover as the first blast came in. The air filled with the sharp crackle of energy weapons, and the sound of alien gunfire echoed through the corridors. The team returned fire, their standard weapons barely making a dent in the invaders' armor. It was clear. This was no ordinary skirmish. They were outgunned, outmatched, and surrounded. "We need to move," Sarah barked. "Head for the core, now." The team pushed forward, fighting through the alien sentries with every ounce of their strength. It was a desperate, brutal fight, but Sarah knew they couldn't afford to stop, not now. Rod watched the live feed from the command center, his chest tightening as he saw the struggle unfold. His mind raced with calculations, trying to piece together how they could support Sarah's team without compromising their position. "Deploy the reinforcements," Rod ordered. "We need them to hold the line." As Sarah's team fought tooth and nail through the ship, they reached the entrance to the core chamber. But the fight was far from over. With every step they took toward the heart of the alien vessel, it felt as if the very walls themselves were pushing back. And just as they breached the threshold of the core, the ship's alarms went off. A deep, resonating sound filled the chamber, followed by an explosion that sent shockwaves through the corridors. It was now or never. The explosion shook the flagship to its core, sending tremors through the metallic walls that reverberated deep into Sarah's bones. She barely managed to keep her balance, her body thrown forward against a wall as the force of the blast rocked the chamber. The lights flickered, then dimmed, casting the crew into a disorienting gloom. Their comms crackled with static as the ship's systems fought to regain control. "Status," Sarah barked into the dark. Jace, who had been closest to the blast, pulled himself to his feet, his armor scorched but intact. We're still alive, but the blast triggered the ship's self-defense mechanisms," he said, wiping blood from his forehead. That wasn't just a normal explosion, it came from deep inside the core. A deep, guttural growl echoed through the chamber, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps, alien creatures, large and powerful, emerging from the shadows. The air was thick with tension as the first of the sentries rounded the corner, their eyes glowing like the embers of a dying fire, their jagged weapons raised in unison. Sarah didn't hesitate. She fired her rifle in rapid succession, the powerful shots tearing through the sentries' armored hides. But even as they fell, more appeared from the dark recesses of the core. This was a trap, and it was closing in fast. "We're surrounded," Jace shouted, eyes wide with urgency. "We can't fight them all off. Hold your ground," Sarah commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. She turned to her team, rallying them. "Get to the control room. We have to disable their systems, now." The team surged forward, weapons blazing, clearing a path through the seemingly endless wave of alien soldiers. But with each step, it became more evident how advanced the aliens were. Their organic armor seemed to regenerate, and their strength was beyond human comprehension. They fought with an unnatural coordination, anticipating every move Sarah and her team made. "Felix," Sarah's voice crackled through the comms. We're facing something worse than we thought. Their security system is adapting fast. We need help, now." Back at the command center, Felix was hunched over a console, eyes darting between screens. His fingers flew across the holographic interface as he scrambled to deploy any kind of countermeasure he could. "I'm working on it, Sarah. Hold on just a little longer. I'm triggering a full EMP burst in your vicinity. It'll temporarily disable their weapons. Make it fast," she shouted. The moment Sarah finished speaking, the ship trembled again, this time with a heavy, mechanical grind as if something large and menacing was coming to life. The doors to the core chamber slammed shut, sealing them inside. The sentries took their positions, locking the team into an ever-tightening circle of danger. Suddenly, the lights in the chamber flickered once more, then went black. "EMP pulse is live." Felix's voice broke through the darkness. "Weapon systems are down for about a minute, but it's not permanent. You've got to finish this now." In the pitch-black room, the team moved with instinct, navigating by memory and training. Sarah felt the familiar adrenaline kick in. This was where she excelled. In the chaos, she took charge, her mind calculating every movement, every angle. The team was not just fighting to survive, they were fighting for the future of the planet. With the EMP pulse rendering the alien weapons temporarily useless, Sarah and her team charged, using their momentum to break through the remaining sentries and reach the control center. The door to the core opened with a screech, revealing an enormous chamber at the heart of the ship. In the center of the room stood the alien control node, a vast, pulsing structure that seemed to breathe, its veins and wiring both mechanical and organic. It hummed with an energy that felt both foreign and unsettling. "This is it," Sarah said, her voice low as she looked around. "This is where we stop them." The team moved into position, preparing the charges they had brought with them. But just as they began to set the explosives, the ship's alarms blared again. The alien forces outside were regrouping, their technology restoring their weapons with terrifying speed. "We don't have much time," Jace said, sweat beading on his brow. "They'll be back any second." Sarah nodded. "Felix, we need the override code. Now." Felix's voice came through the comms, his voice strained. "I'm trying, but their encryption is unlike anything we've seen. Give me a few more minutes." "Do it fast," Sarah snapped. She could feel the heat rising in the chamber, the air growing thick as the countdown ticked on. The control node's pulsating light seemed to grow stronger, feeding off the tension. It was as if the ship itself was alive, aware of their presence and their mission. Just as she positioned the last of the explosives, a deep rumble shook the floor beneath them. The chamber doors slammed shut again, trapping them inside with only moments to spare. "This is it," Jace shouted. "We're running out of time." The team took their positions, weapons at the ready, as the chamber doors began to open once more. A new wave of sentries poured in, their weapons raised, prepared to obliterate anyone who dared to tamper with the ship. Sarah looked at the rest of her team, their faces set with grim determination. "Move," she yelled. "Get to the control node." The battle was on once again. This time, however, it was no longer about surviving. It was about finishing what they started. Felix's voice crackled through their comms, his words strained with urgency. "Override access granted. I've got the code. It's now or never." Sarah lunged forward, firing with precision at the oncoming sentries, her shots finding their marks even as they closed in on her. The rest of the team fought valiantly, covering her as she reached the control node. With one final surge of energy, she slammed her hand into the terminal, entering the override code. The ship trembled violently as the control node flickered, then, in a split second, went dark. Outside the flagship, Rod was watching the live feed, his breath held. The EMP had worked, but now he was holding his breath as the seconds ticked by. The entire world seemed to pause. And then, the flagship shook. The ground beneath them quaked as the ship groaned and cracked, a deafening sound like metal splitting in half. The countdown was over. The flagship's core was no longer in control. The flagship's core shuddered violently, its massive energy field flickering and spasming like a wounded beast. Sarah stood at the heart of the alien ship, her chest heaving from exertion, sweat dripping down her face. She didn't wait to see the full result. She had no time. The core was destabilizing, and the ship was on the brink of total collapse. But the battle wasn't over yet. "Everyone, get back," she shouted, her voice hoarse. "The countdown's about to hit zero." The team began to retreat, moving as fast as their fatigued bodies could carry them. But the door that had sealed them inside earlier slammed shut again with a deafening clang. The team skidded to a halt, their path blocked by an enormous alien figure that now filled the chamber doorway. It was unlike any creature they had seen before, taller than any soldier, its body twisted with grotesque amalgamations of tech and flesh. Its arms were massive, each hand holding a weapon that hummed with lethal energy. This was no ordinary sentry. This was the ship's guardian. The creature's eyes glowed a haunting green, locking onto Sarah with an unblinking stare. It opened its mouth, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth, and let out a guttural roar that reverberated through the chamber. The ground beneath them trembled, and the alien moved forward, its heavy footsteps shaking the walls. "This is it," Jace whispered, a tinge of fear creeping into his voice. "We can't outrun this thing." Sarah's mind raced, but there was no time for doubt. They had made it this far. They couldn't stop now. The core was unstable. The ship was coming apart. If they didn't neutralize this creature, they wouldn't make it out alive. "Focus," Sarah snapped. "We fight together." They turned to face the monster, their weapons raised, but even as they fired, it was clear their standard weapons wouldn't be enough. The alien Guardian's thick armor absorbed their shots without even flinching. The energy from its weapons crackled in the air, a deadly warning that sent a chill through their bones. Felix's voice cut through the chaos, urgent and sharp. "You've got to get out of there, Sarah. The core is about to go critical. You have 30 seconds." Sarah glanced over at her team. She knew they couldn't defeat the creature head-on, not with the weapons they had. But she also knew that if they didn't find a way to stop it, they wouldn't make it to the escape pods in time. "Get to the back," Sarah ordered, pushing her team toward the far side of the room. "I'll hold it off." Jace's face went pale. "You can't take it on alone." "I can," she said, voice steady, though her heart pounded. "I'll buy you time. Just go." They hesitated for a moment, but Sarah's command was unwavering. She had led them through countless battles, and they knew better than to question her. Without another word, they turned and ran for the exit, hoping against hope that they could outrun the destruction they had triggered. But Sarah wasn't ready to abandon the fight. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, and drew a combat knife, a weapon that had served her well in countless skirmishes. It wasn't much against the creature's towering form, but it was all she had. The rest of the team had their own escape plans. She would stay behind. As the creature lumbered forward, Sarah charged, ducking under its massive arm as it swung at her with blinding speed. She rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the strike, and lunged with her knife toward the creature's exposed flank. The blade sank into the alien's skin, but the wound barely slowed it down. The creature roared in fury, its massive fist swinging toward Sarah. She ducked, but the impact of its blow sent her flying across the chamber, slamming into the wall. She felt the air rush out of her lungs, but there was no time to stop. The explosion was coming. She had to keep moving. Using the momentum of her fall, Sarah pushed herself back up, gasping for breath. She was battered and bruised, but she couldn't afford to think about it. She couldn't afford to fail. The core was about to explode. The ship would go down, and she would either escape or die trying. The alien Guardian was coming for her again, its massive weapon charging with deadly energy. It was faster now, angrier. Sarah's mind raced. If her knife wasn't enough, then she needed something else, something to stop this beast before it could stop her. And then she saw it. The creature's armored plating had a weak spot, an exposed joint in its upper chest. It was the only vulnerable area on its body, and it was right in front of her. She wasn't fast enough to kill it outright, but she could disable it. With a final surge of energy, Sarah sprinted toward the creature, ducking under another strike, and aimed her knife straight at the exposed joint. The weapon slid into the creature's chest with a sickening sound, and the beast let out a deafening roar of pain. But Sarah wasn't done. She reached down, using all her remaining strength, and pulled the knife out. The creature staggered, faltering, as its systems began to falter, sparks of energy flashing from the wound. Sarah didn't wait to see the result. She knew this would buy them the time they needed. With a roar of defiance, Sarah turned and ran for the exit. Outside, the sky was dark, filled with the distant fire of alien ships. But the team had made it to the escape pods, barely escaping the chaos as the alien flagship erupted in a violent burst of energy. They watched as the ship began to crumble, its massive body disintegrating before their eyes. The world trembled with the shockwave as the flagship collapsed into itself, the once mighty vessel now a smoldering ruin in the sky. "We did it," Jace breathed, his voice cracking with disbelief. Sarah didn't answer. She simply looked out at the horizon, watching the final remnants of the alien force burn away in the atmosphere. She had done what she came to do, but this was just one victory in a war that was far from over. "Felix, Ems," Rod's voice came through their comms, shaking them from their thoughts. "We've got reports coming in from all over. The invasion isn't over, but we've bought the world some time. And we're going to keep fighting. You're not alone in this." Sarah looked at her team, then out at the stars, feeling the weight of everything they had fought for. This was their moment. But the war, no, the battle, was just beginning. And they would face it together. The old heroes, the new warriors, they had united to save the world. And they would keep fighting until the very end.